Today is a good day because today is Hyperlow day. So I've got a new Hyperlow frame, and thanks to Richard I've also got some 6-inch arms for my Hyperlow RS, and this frame is the newly released RS Plus, which, if you followed this channel, you'll know that the original Hyperlow RS was kind of like a hybrid frame. It was light enough to be a race frame, but also built in such a way as you could freestyle it as well. And the one I built, which was built pretty light with Emax RS2 motors on, weighed in at about 250 grams, so firmly in the racer category. And I liked mine a lot. I'll leave a link to the review up there. It was one of those frames that was, you kind of had to build it in the right way, but if you chose your components wisely, a relatively smallish 4-in-1 ESC, flight controller, small VTX, etc., everything fit together perfectly. Stick on, a normal sized battery, and you didn't sort of have a millimetre of waste. It was really sort of purposeful, and the fact that you could run it with a GoPro session on it and then take it off and use it for racing was a really clever thing, although in my case I never actually got round to the racing, so it didn't really fulfill its sort of dual purpose in my hands. So this is the Hyperlow RS Plus, as I said, and the idea of this guy is it's a slightly bigger version to the original RS, so it should give us a little bit more room. And the bit that I find really exciting is that this is the first Hyperlow since the Hyperlow CG, which comes with, well, what I call Gucci carbon, but is basically fully woven carbon. So if you look at any standard arm, the carbon is basically, ignore the top plate, the carbon basically runs in lines and it's stuck together in sheets, and what can happen in a crash is you'll clip the end and it'll delaminate and start pulling apart. And if you go back to my waffle video, which I did a couple of videos ago, you'll see what happened to my Smooth Operator 5-inch, where it basically delaminated. And what I've done with that is I've basically just viced it together and glued it as a temporary fix until the new one arrives. Now the beauty of this Gucci carbon is I don't know how much of this you'll be able to see, but the strands don't just run it along, they kind of go into each other, in and out. And as I said, you get no delamination. Now this is a broken Hyperlow CG arm, so it does break, albeit in the 9 or 10 months I've had my CGs, I've broken 2 arms. But if you look at the end of this arm, which is 9 months old, you'll see that there's absolutely zero delamination, and when it does go, it kind of breaks cleanly. Now I'm not saying this is stronger than the normal Hyperlow carbon, which is really good stuff, and you can tell it's really good because the strands, or should I say the layers, are really thin. They're not sort of big chunks, but I just love this Gucci stuff. It just has a really nice sort of silky feel to it, and it feels great in the hand. So we're going to put this thing apart. The one thing I do want to look at is Rich has made a new GoPro ramp. Let's have a look. Yeah, so he's made a new GoPro ramp, which, and obviously these bits will just help stop your GoPro slipping forward or backwards, which is a really nice design, and it looks like, I'm guessing that's for a GoPro Hero 7 or similar, so it looks like you get one of those as well. So let's put this together and let's have a look at her. Right, so here you have her. She's built up, or at least in the configuration I'm going to look at first, and as you can see, as per the original RS, what we've really got is a small footprint, slender freestyle frame, and compared to the original one, this has just really sort of been muscled up a little bit around its sort of midsection. The arms still remain slender and 5mm thick. We've still got this beautiful, very much Hyperlow front bumper, which is removable and easily replaceable. We've still got the 3 battery straps on the top and the Hyperlow pad, and at the back we've got the really simple but works really well little pad to support your FPV antenna, and zip tie holes to hold it in. Like the RS, we've got the 2 braces. These arms lock together and join in the middle, and then we've got this brace here which holds them together, and we've got an additional brace compared to the original RS here, and obviously there's a brace at the front. The whole thing, as per usual with Hyperlow, is just really well made. Hyperlows are the only frames that when you use these Duncan nuts, they never ever come out. They really do hold your bolts in place, and you never have to tighten them up again. On the CG, I've never had to tighten an arm, so they really do work well. Now, when you're building this, you can choose to run it with 6 standoffs, as I've done here, or you can have an additional 2 at the back, which would go here. Now in my case, I'm probably going to run it with the 6 standoffs because it's pretty strong. The whole thing is super stiff, and given my battery is probably going to sit there, I'm not too worried about breaking the back end, although, you know, if you're flying on concrete or something that's really hard when you impact it, just use the additional braces. So let's get a weight and see what the score is. Hopefully it'll fit on here. It's not going to be super light, but that's not really the idea of it. So the weight of it as it stands like that, with the battery pad, the pad for the LiPo on the back, and the camera mounts, is 102.7. If I was to add in the additional 2 standoffs and the screws to go with it, excuse me, let's pop those on here. We've gone up to 106.53, so it adds another sort of 3 grams, 4 grams. And the other part is the GoPro mount, which is this part, and somewhat nicely I've got red standoffs on this one, which will be really nice when I use the iFlight Zing motors. But if we pop that on, what do we get? So we go from 102.7 to 119. So it's a pretty heavy mount, but as you can see, it's really beefy, really stiff, and should hold your GoPro in pretty snugly. And of course that would just sit on the front like so, almost kind of like a set of horns, which, given actually the angle that that's going to sit at and how far forward it sits, I very much doubt we're going to really get any props in view in a major way. Now, in terms of arm configuration, apologies for this, but I can't find my tape measure, so let's have a look. So this one is a True X, but it comes in a number of different configurations. So you can have it in a True X, stretched X or squashed X. So unlike previous Hyperlows, which were only available in stretched or True X, you can get sort of a more H-frame style, which will definitely keep your props out of view, and some people prefer that. Personally, I prefer sort of a True X or a stretched X. I think it gives more authority in the pitch axis when you're flying. Right, so here she is with the iFlight motors. What a beautiful thing that is. And by luck or judgment, oh, you sexy thing. There's one thing I quickly want to mention actually, before I get too excited with this guy, which, let's be honest, there's nothing more exciting than a new frame and motors. Because there's so many different ideas you can play with when you're doing something like this. Right, let's take this off. If you notice, as I said, there are 20 by 20 mount holes if you want to use a small flight controller, and they're not affected by the arms either, so you don't need to worry about that. You'll notice at the back there are 20 by 20 mount holes, and I kind of complained a little bit, or complained's the wrong word, but mentioned a little bit on the original that it doesn't, and it's the same here, it doesn't really fit in anything 20 by 20. Here's a slightly bigger 20 by 20 board by Omnibus. Whatever you use, it's always a little bit tight, and I kind of thought, oh, not again, but I have noticed actually that what we should be doing if we want to use something in there that uses 20 by 20 mounts is, instead of using these standoffs here, just use the back ones instead. So you do have the option to mount 20 by 20. It's not a big deal by any means, because usually you would have your VTX sat here anyway, but I kind of, in the back of my mind, following my smooth operator builds, and to an extent the CGs actually, if you kind of struggle for space, or you want to run a really low stack, if you were to use sort of a, get this out of the way, if you were to use a 20 by 20 ESC, of which there are some, should you dare to risk, and 2020 by flight controller like that, and just use a very small VTX up front and run it with a pigtail along the top. And I think these are 20mm standoffs that we've got here. You can choose which ones you get, whether they're 15 or 20, but you could probably, with a very small VTX like a VTX-03 or something along those lines, let me just see. So this is a broken VTX-03, so if you wanted to run a really low stack, sort of 10mm or so, really bring it down and make a true Hyperlow by using, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a small, yeah, you could probably just get away on a 10mm stack using a full-size ESC and mounting the flight controller very slightly above it. And then you could use the VTX-03 or something equally small at the back like so, or even use a larger VTX and run the pigtail along the underside of this top plate. So yeah, so there's plenty of options with this guy, and I like that on a quad. I like a quad to give me options to build it in the way that I choose, as opposed to being rigorously stuck to one way. I mean, in terms of my one, I think, given my recent experiences with 20 by 20 stacks, and because I'm going to run this on 6S, probably going to keep life simple and use a normal sized 6S ESC and probably pair it with one of these omnibus F4s, so nothing fancy. But yeah, there you go. Cheers guys, thanks, bye bye.